Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. Today, we are doing a bit of a creative episode because we are going to do an episode on creativity, and we were expecting to do a different episode, so we're all going to be creative about our creativity. So very exciting. This week, we also have a new person on who is a ML employee, but we'll get to them last. Let's start first with Danette. Danette, how has your week been?
It's been a busy week this week, Jez. Finished a big job yesterday, and I've been in a conference the last day and a bit, so that's been awesome too. So very grateful and looking forward to next week where we'll be in person for the podcast.
Very exciting. A live podcast at our house. That'll be coming next week, everybody. Graham, how's your week been?
Hey, Jez. A bit like your mum, pretty hectic. A couple of 3:30, 4 a.m. starts, which is always fun. And as I was saying to somebody this morning on a phone call, the exciting thing about Friday is there's only 3 more sleeps until Monday. So really pumped about that. And he's not going to talk to me again, apparently.
Nice. And Leggas, how's your week been? Now, for people that are listening, Leggas is our website builder, a bit of an all-rounder, I'd say at ML, but also my sister. So what's up, Leggas?
Not much.
Hey, what? Your brother and sister?
I know. Surprise reveal on
we're
the podcast.
all family, surprisingly. It's almost like we're a family business. My week's been good. I got my booster shot this week and have been kind of taking it a bit more chill. Done some work, but yeah, been pretty nice. Other than the cold weather, that's about the only downside.
Nice, great work. So welcome to the podcast. Like, it's also good to have you on.
Thank you.
No problem. As mentioned before, we're going to be talking about creativity today. And I think we can just start with this kind of general question, which is, why is creativity so important? And I mean, obviously, it's important in a bunch of different areas, whether you do something that is creative or isn't. I think it's always good to have creativity, and it's always a very valuable thing to add. So I might start with Danette with this one. Why is creativity so important?
Oh, it's a great question, Jez. I think in the world we live in, which, everything's changing so rapidly, the ability to be creative allows you to look at things from different perspectives. It allows you to innovate, to adapt. So from a business perspective, there's a lot of really good reasons why we would want to build our creativity. And I think if you look at our world, it's a visual world. So one of the things that I know you tried this week, and I know Leggas does all the time because this is part of her degree, is, things like animation, videos, all of that type of stuff are now part of people's lives. And so, if you go, well, this is just what I do, that's really constrictive. Whereas creativity allows you to go, well, what if I did something like this? Or what if I tried this? And from a business perspective, it really does allow you to adapt and change with what's going on in the world. So great question, Jez.
Perfect. Great answer. Graham, why is creativity so important?
How long have we got?
20 seconds.
Okay. Wow, what a question. I think everything that Danette said, and it's life. So I think, I was just thinking about, wow, there are so many things we could talk about in terms of creativity, and some of it's sort of maybe conscious and some of it isn't necessarily conscious. But look at COVID. COVID-19, apparently it's a thing, it's still with us, and we're enjoying it because it forces us to be a little more creative in how we show up each day and how we find things to be grateful for. But just as a virus, the creativity, the ingenuity, embedded in the virus, because it's morphed a number of times and mutated into different variants because it also wants to live, which sounds sort of weird, but at the same time, it's life. It's everywhere around us. So I think if we didn't have creativity, yuck. That's all. It's not a very creative response, but it's Friday. That's all I've got. Just yuck.
No, I agree. I think it would be very much more draining. And so yuck is a great word to put there. Leggas, again, welcome to your first podcast. What's just your brief
Thank
thoughts,
you.
if you want, or you can go as hard as you want on why is creativity so important?
Well, I mean, I think creativity is really important. I mean, for me, I consider myself to be a creative person, and I consider it to be like an important part of like self-expression. I also think it's like a great way to learn because like the more creative you get, the more sort of like ways you're problem solving in a situation, in ways that you may not have ever sort of done before. And I also think like creativity is important to the whole of like human history. You know, if someone didn't get creative with a stick and a rock, we wouldn't have had, arrows or spears or anything. And, like from there, I feel like every person that's made a development for the human like species has been creative. So I think it's super important.
Yeah, that's a great answer. It actually, it's a yeah, just like I guess everything that's important has used something that maybe already exists or invent something new to create something new, like you're talking about with arrows and stuff. I think because I even think we were talking recently to Krishan, who is Leggas's partner, and he was talking about Excel, the spreadsheets and what have you. And it's so interesting to see someone light up when they talk about Excel. Because it's not typically something that I feel. Graham smiling, of course, but even I guess the thing that I saw when we were talking to him is that he could, I guess, use it as a fully functional tool. But I also can see that once you understand the tool, there is a fun in the creativity of how can I utilize these different commands to create new things that are valuable for other people. So there is creativity even in things that people would think of as super regimented, programs and stuff. I just wanted to sort of touch on a few more things. Yesterday, I went and saw the new Jackass movie. Speaking of creativity, and I guess for me, what I thought was interesting about that in terms of creativity is not necessarily the stunts or anything like that, but the show itself. If you were to subtract the insurance budget of it, is almost free to make because it's basically just like everything there was clearly handmade. They had these huge water slides and that's just, they just laid down tarps and put some weights on the side of it and that's it. And the fun of that movie is using creativity to create these new kind of things that, aren't really getting done. And they're super low budget as well. A lot of them, like some of them are just turning off lights and then touching people with like fake bare hands or something. And so, so that was something I was noticing yesterday. And then finally, I was just going to say, with art, I was thinking about this today with art. And I think art is also good because it's connective between people, because it's allows the artist to have an idea of what they want to say. And then it allows them to create something and go out on a limb to be criticized by making it. But then it also allows people to connect with that and have a shared connection of an emotion that was meant to be elicited by a certain artwork. They're feeling it in the same way that potentially the artist was feeling it, or they're feeling a connection to another person through other stuff. Anyway, that was just some things I was thinking about today.
Messages.
Thanks. Again, improvising. So just trying to put some extra bits and pieces out there. Also, if you're watching the video, don't worry. This is not a cut. I'm using a red pen and it's leaked onto my hand. So
that's creative.
That is creative. I guess. All right. So I'll throw our second question out there. What are some simple things that we can do to get the creative juices flowing? And I might start with you, Graham, for this one.
Simple things. Stop what you're doing. Disconnect from devices. Probably more importantly, get outside. Go and sit under a tree if you can find one, and just disconnect from devices. Spend some time alone in nature. That'll do it.
I actually think that might be a good one just to quickly stop off on. When you talk about being alone in terms of inspiring creativity, and I guess disconnecting from devices, why do you think that is? There's a connection there.
So I think, yes, it's absolutely possible for us to be creative with other people, no question. Anybody who's gone through a creative process, we're talking about watching a movie yesterday. I love the idea of, it's not your level of resources, but your level of resourcefulness in terms of what you can create with what you've got. So we can amplify creativity in a group environment. And again, if you think about some of the most creative movies you've seen, you absolutely guarantee that most of them have a team working together to develop the script, etc. So it's not just one person. But we also know that so firstly, being in nature is really good for us holistically anyway, full stop. But being disconnected from devices also shifts our brain state. And that's probably the most important thing. So, all of the neuroscience for the last 130, 140 years, when we get into talking about getting into a flow state, which is where our brain activity goes through the roof, it's really interesting that the parts of our brain that we tend to use a lot when we're around other people shut down, so that more of our brain can actually engage in the creative process. And we're using both hemispheres. So it's not like left brain, shut left brain down, right brain amp up, or vice versa. We're actually using both. And again, we know from science, and if you look through history, that some of the most creative people have a lot of their inspiration, or more of their inspiration, when they're alone, and often when they're in nature.
Awesome. Great message there for all of us to how to get a little bit more creative, how to kickstart it a little bit. That was awesome. Thanks so much for that, Graham.
Welcome.
Danette, what are some simple things to get the creative juices flowing?
It's a great question. I'm just going to add to what Graham said to start with. When we get into that flow state, the inner critic shuts down. So that really helps us amplify our creativity. So one of the things you'll notice if you're new to, say, creativity is the voice in your head will go, no, don't do that, blah, 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 blah. So that chatter, you just need to basically say, go away and just give things a go. So what if I stuck my hand in red paint and swirled it all over the windows? What would happen? And so just try different things and think about, how can I express this emotion I'm feeling in perhaps a physical way? And it could be through art, it could be through music. And remembering that creativity is not one form, it can be so many different forms. So I remember an artist who, I think, put a great white shark in a tank, and he then became this most famous artist because he basically put this shark in the tank, and it was a dead shark, so like they'd done whatever they needed to do. So I think being willing to experiment and know that whatever you create is okay. So you don't want that inner chat to go. And I think just saying to yourself, imagine if I was this, or I was feeling this, how would I then represent this in a painting or in music or whatever? And look around you and use whatever's around you. So don't go, I have to have the best art, I don't know, paints and stuff like that. It's like, okay, whatever's around me, I could do it. And the other thing I'd say is do it every day. Try to do something creative every day, because that builds the muscle, because it's a skill like any other skill. Great question, Jez. Thank you.
Yeah, great one. That's really good. And even that shark art piece, I remember hearing someone talk about it when it was made. They were saying that anybody could have done this, but then the important fact is that no one else had done it yet. So you don't even have to be technically that achieved to do something creative. It's just, has anyone done it? And it can just be putting a circle inside a shark's mouth, and then now that's something new or whatever. Even if it's and you just draw it with like a little pen. It doesn't matter if it's perfect, as long as it's just interesting and unique to you, and maybe it can express something. So thanks so much for that, Danette. Leggas.
I was just going to share.
Oh yeah, jump on.
Before, when I was young, we went to Europe and went to the Tate Gallery in London, and we started walking across this room that looked like they were doing construction. And the guy said, no, you can't walk there. That's the actual artwork. It was just bits of concrete. So it literally can be anything. And if you're the first one to think of it, it can end up being famous. Sorry, I interrupted it.
No, that's a great example. Thank you for that. Leggas, what are some simple things you can do to get the creative juices flowing?
Well, so I do a creative degree at the moment, and I found that like quite an interesting thing that I've been experiencing the last year is like they just sort of give you a very vague prompt and you sort of have to respond to that prompt. And I feel like that's a really good way to get creative because there's like 10,000 different ways that you could possibly take this one assignment, but you have to like sort of, organize your mind a little bit and like, do up some mind maps and stuff like that to figure out the direction that you want to take. I also think I agree with Graham, like rest and being by yourself is really important. I know that after my first year, I felt really burnt out creatively. And I sort of took about 2 months off from doing anything creative. But I found that I needed that break. And I feel a lot better going back into it than I was before because I was just creatively exhausted, to be honest. But I think like an important thing about creativity is also like practice is what makes progress, not like perfection. And like, if you practice a little bit, you'll see your skill improve, and that can be really satisfying as well as you're doing anything creative, from like music to art to whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great couple of things in there, Leggas. Great stuff. I think the prompt idea is really good because even that one, you can have one prompt and you can just challenge yourself. Can I come up with 3 different ideas for this prompt? And then that in of itself is flexing the muscle.
I mean, a great game that we came up with is that whiteboard. We sort of do like this whiteboard drawing tattoo game. And so you have 3 minutes and you get 3 separate prompts and everyone has the same prompts. And they can be kind of random and you have to try and create a cohesive illustration, I guess, based on those 3 things. So you could have like a giraffe surfing and I don't know, like a bird or something, and you would have to try and create a cohesive image in 3 minutes based on those things. And that's really good for trying, like you see the different results between people and it's really cool actually. Yeah.
So if I can just tack on the end of that, Leggas, Jez, I'd love to hear your thoughts around creativity, particularly in terms of improv. Because I think there's also a similar process there on one level where you get a prompt or you're prompted by somebody else and then, in the moment you need to respond or react or run away. I'm not sure what the options are.
So Graham, you actually I was about to do a note and this says improv for those that can't read. I was about to do it. So thanks for teeing that up. That was perfect.
You're most welcome.
No, I had prompt and then improv was exactly what I'd written down. So that's perfect. Yeah, with improv, it's exactly the same as that. It's just a slightly higher stakes version of that drawing game. I think of it in my head, which is exactly right. Someone gives you a prompt and it's your job to take it however you want. A lot of the time they say match the prompt and then add something. But at the same time, if it's the start of a scene and I come in and go, hello, have you seen the doctor around here? I can take that anyway because as the person responding, I can be a receptionist. I can be another person in the waiting room. I can be another doctor. I can be someone that's not even related to a doctor at all. I can just be someone that's just in a grocery store. So it's up to you to really just take in the input and then sort of channel it yourself. So thanks for that, Graham. Perfect, nice. Perfect co-hosting right there. All right. Well, that was well done, Graham. Very creative and improvised answer. And I think that's perfect. I guess for me, the final question I wanted to ask, and this is how can we see magic in everyday objects to inspire us? Because I think this is a little bit of what we've been talking about anyway. But just sort of to get my thoughts on it, just to give everyone a little bit of time to have some ideas. I wanted to ask this to our guest, but I think it's also an interesting question to ask. And I think it sort of comes straight off the back of what we were just talking about with prompts. And then I think maybe this could be something to do with spending time by yourself. But when I think everyday objects can inspire us in a lot of ways, whether it's looking at something that already exists and wondering how you can add your own flair to it, or looking at something that exists and that inspiring an idea about, whether it's function or different ways to use it. I know that a test you can use for creativity is basically give someone an object, whether it be a shoe, and just give them like 5 minutes, and then they think of all the different uses they can use for it, whether it just be, to swat flies, or if it's a little garden bed, all these different things that you can do with it. But I think giving yourself the time by yourself to sit and by yourself and look at objects, I think that can also be inspirational, in the sense that some random thing may spark something that's very valuable. Anyway, I might throw this question over to Graham now. Graham, how can we see magic in everyday objects and inspire ourselves?
Again, I think we need to slow down. I think to see or to appreciate the magic, the wonder in everyday objects, we need not to be thinking about a million other things or trying to get a whole bunch of stuff done. So, and I suspect that the other really important thing is curiosity. And we tend to, I don't know, from my perspective, I think we tend to lose a lot of that sort of inbuilt, or maybe we just forget that it's there. Curiosities, as we get older and we become more important, busier at work, and we've got a bunch of things to do, and we stop being curious. But if I could share just a really quick story, I couldn't find the right color. But Exhibit A, there's and I've forgotten the guy's name, which is terrible because I'm just going to share a story about him. But anyway, it's the gentleman,
Kyle McDonald.
Kyle McDonald, thank you. McDonald, yeah, it was. Who once traded a red paperclip. That was pink, but a red one. And so the deal was he just wanted to see how far he could get, literally just by trading. No cash changed hands at all. I believe in 14 trades, he ended up owning a 2-story house in downtown Saskatchewan, Canada. Amazing. And somewhere along the line, it's been a long time since I read the book, there was an aspect of curiosity there. I wonder, what if? It's a bit like the scientific process. There's inbuilt curiosity or creativity behind every science, because at some point, and this sort of goes back to your comment, Jez, about, take something that's existing and add more to it, or make something more to it. A lot of the scientific process is looking at something we already know or understand or believe, and then thinking, well, what if? And if we didn't have that sort of curiosity, again, yuck, with 2 Ks. So I think for me, the creativity starts, curiosity, I think is absolutely essential. And we need to hit the pause button from time to time to engage in that.
I actually, that's reminded me of something that you two told me once. That was about...
was that go to your room, or is this a different time?
This is a different time. It was about this guy you told me, who was a conductor, who said that when mistakes happen, he says that's interesting or something.
Benjamin Zander. Yeah.
There you go. You've reminded me of that person. So maybe highlight that for the podcast audience.
Yeah. So Ben Zander was, I'm not sure if he still is, but when we met him, he spoke at a conference where we went to in Toronto a few years ago. He was the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra, an amazing human being, absolutely astonishing. And his favorite phrase was, how fascinating. So his response to anything that was unexpected, potentially disastrous, catastrophic, was just, how fascinating. Just a genuinely amazing human being.
Perfect. And that's a great attitude to go into being creative with. Danette, how can we all see magic in everyday objects to inspire us?
So that's interesting, Jez. Hey, I love it. So Graham took the red paperclip because that was going to be my one that I was going to talk about. But another way to think about it is look at the really creatives across the world, whether they're alive now or whether they've passed. For example, Leonardo da Vinci kept all these journals where things would just fascinate him. And so he would just pull them apart, think about, what if people could fly? And he would try and design something to fly. And he had so many areas that he had gifts in. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to be him, but just being open to that possibility, using those words, how interesting, how fascinating, rather than, that didn't work. So giving ourselves a lot of slack to go, let's just try it. It's just an experiment, and give it a go. And I think the other one, which I think COVID actually really helped us realize, is we get so busy that when we slow down and when we don't have access to things, we remember to be really grateful and appreciative of them. And I think, anytime there's a storm and you lose power, you go, whoa, oh, electricity, having a phone, having all of those things. And I think sometimes just slowing back down to that and looking at what can I be grateful for, and then seeing that magic in someone's created, whether it's a computer, a phone, even a pen. Yeah, all of that. So then you can use that and think, how do I use that to, create creativity, but also to see the magic in everything that's created. And most especially people, because we're all unique. Thanks, Jez.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And it actually, it reminds me a little bit of sometimes a good way to use creativity for me sometimes is if I have a gut feeling about something and I don't feel like there's an answer, sometimes you can just kind of do your own like little mini research and find out, or just think about, could these be connected in a different way? I think as well, when you were talking about not having power, it reminded me of like, what else can I do now that I don't have power, So, and yeah, anyway, thanks for that, Mum. And Leggas, how can we all see magic in everyday objects to inspire us?
I mean, that's a pretty good question. I don't have that many great answers, to be honest, but one thing that came to my mind is just because it's sitting next to me here, but I've found like the presence of indoor plants to be like, help me with inspiration. And also like, I love looking at my little indoor plants because they've grown so big. So for example, I've got this monstera here, and I got him just as a little baby. And, I've never really had indoor plants before, not very much. And like, I've repotted this one and he hasn't died. And like the slow, maybe like gratification of having a plant and it thriving is like really nice, I guess. And like, I've painted pots for my plants and like tried to, I've got all this like sort of floral / plant, looks behind me. I just love plants. So I find them inspiring. And I guess that's like part of being out in nature as well, and the magic all around us. But like the world is a beautiful place, and you can like get a lot of inspiration just from like seeing a beautiful vista or just like a cool place or whatever. Like I find that like with my visual eye, I know that a place is like really beautiful if I like want to draw it or if I want to paint it or like, create something out of it, I guess. So yeah, that's how I find, I guess, magic in everyday objects, by wanting to recreate them.
I think also with that one, you've touched on something as well, which is kind of cool, that like plants can be inspirational in just looking at them. And you're like, oh, that's beautiful. And that might inspire something. But what you touched on, where it's the also longer term relationship with something also can be inspirational. The fact that it grows and does stuff can also be its own inspiration. So great answer. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being on the podcast today. I'll get some final thoughts. It's been a really good one. Thank you all for improvising with me, and we got some really good answers there. So some stuff that I'll take and think about after this one as well, and have a listen back and maybe put on when I'm trying to think of something creative. But I might start with Jeanette here. Final thoughts on creativity.
Give it a go. So just try different things. And the other thing you'll notice, and you've spoken about this on previous podcasts, is that when you try something new, you feel more alive. So it's scary because it puts us out of our comfort zone. So it grows us. So if it scares you, give it a go. Be a bit more creative. Thank you, Jez. Great podcast.
Perfect. Thanks for that, and great response there. Graham, final thoughts on creativity.
I think going back to one of Danette's comments before, just about the inner critic. So choose to ignore your inner critic. There's a theory that the world doesn't need everybody to be creative. I don't subscribe to that at all. I think the world would be even more amazing. Leggas point about we live in an amazing world, we do, but imagine how much more amazing it would be if we all engaged in creativity a little bit more often. And if you are alive, you can be creative. It's that simple. Yeah, that's it. I'm not sure about what happens after, but right now, we can all do it. So as Danette said, give it a go. Give it a go. You cannot do it wrong because it's uniquely individual to all of us.
Yeah, I think that's a great point for everybody that's a bit scared to try it. You can't go wrong. It's perfect. Leggas, final thoughts on just creativity.
I mean, I agree with the others as well. Like, I think creativity, a lot of the time we want what's in our mind to be exactly what is on the paper at the end, which like rarely will actually happen. And like, what are the ways that you're going to approach this new? Like, what techniques are you going to learn in order to do this differently? Or, I think there's a lot of ways that you can be creative. It's all about just accepting that it's probably not going to be perfect or necessarily even good to begin with, but it's about the process, and it's like, it's the journey, not the destination kind of vibe. So yeah, because I know that I have a strong inner critic and I want to be a perfectionist about everything, but like, you just can't in life, you just can't. Don't put that pressure on yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for today's podcast. I really appreciate it. I feel like I learned a lot. So that was awesome. For everybody listening, you can follow us on Spotify, anywhere where you get your podcast, and you can watch this either on YouTube or you can listen to it wherever you listen to your podcast. I want to thank everybody for improvising their way through the podcast. I actually think it was a really good one. And we have potentially a new artwork reveal coming up at some point, which we've kept hidden today. But if you want, you can go check out the YouTube video of this podcast and see a blurred version of what it could be. So we'd love to hear your guesses as to what it could be in future episodes. But otherwise, I just want to thank everybody for doing this creativity podcast, and I want to wish them all a good week and wish everybody listening a good week.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Jez.
everyone.
Thanks, Leggas.
Jez, again. Great job.